How's everyone doing this morning?
Hey everybody, welcome to Reaper Pro Tips and happy Wednesday, happy hump day, as it were. We are here, more or less. Justin and I are sluggish, but here. All right, let's see. We've got so much chat because I let you guys like pile into the chat room before I hit the go switch here. Ah, and I'm resizing my window inadvertently. Ah, don't you hate it when that happens? When that happens, I've got my screen all set up, and I'm just like, all right, not bad. Miss Imp, Stephanie, Margaret, hello, Twistedoma, hello, Casmania, hey, dear Clearman, Orion, hey. Yeah, Orion, you were totally wrong. No, not at all. It is actually happening. We are happening, more or less. Woohoo! Well, at least you have a backup camera, Twistedoma. My car is so ancient, it does not have a backup camera, but I love it, so I don't want to get rid of it. So it's like Honda needs to make the Honda Element again, and then I can trade in my old Element for a new Element. Are you listening, Honda? Yay. Hey, Grinigo. I'm not the Reaper. Dave is the Reaper. Like as far as Reaper people go, Dave is the Grim Reaper for sure. For sure. He has that status, not me. Don't make him mad. Hey, Bob and Julie, how's it going, Green users? Green users. Julie, did you psychically know that I was painting your spirit beast? Because it's she's turning out pretty well. So now you can see her mostly. I was working on wings yesterday, or a wing, figuring out what my wing was going to be like. The official Taslanch is here. We can now start the stream. Hey, Max Styles, good to see you. Wow, that's impressive because those avalanche things are huge trouble. I haven't ever had a car with one. The element was bought when actually I got the element the day I brought Kiri home as a puppy from the airport. So that's how old it is. My element is as old as my dog. So all right, let's see here. Let's just go to cam and let's just get into it because I'm kind of in a let's go mood today. So boom, we have Spirit Beast. All right, Bob and Julie, since you're here, I'm going to show you what Spirit Beast looks like. See. So this is Spirit Beast so far. I've gotten the legs done and the hooves. I decided to do leopard spots in kind of a weird leopardy Appaloosa pattern on the Spirit Beast. The white, all of the legs are going to be brought up to this white. And then I was starting on the fur. I was just pretty much blocking in the fur. Got the face kind of highlighted where I wanted it. This is the wing that we did yesterday. So it'll be like that on the back side of both wings, I think. And then, because this is before, this is after. For those on my Patreon, if you're on my Discord, I posted a before and after picture yesterday of these. And then the underside will probably be later. I haven't decided. We may do underside of wings tomorrow just for fun. But yeah, so that's how Spirit Beast is turning out so far. I really like this model. So I may actually finish it. One never knows, right? So today we're doing Antlers, because it's the really, except for the base, it's the last part of the Spirit Beast that doesn't have paint on it. And then we might do basing the Spirit Beast tomorrow. I'm not certain. Basing the Spirit Beast might be the remainder of this week. Or we might do underside of the wing and then basing the Spirit Beast. I'm not sure. But we definitely will do basing. Yeah, well, it was the Spirit Beast, right? So I wanted to actually do the hooves more like horses, even though they're cloven, and that's why the dark socks with the white socks. Yeah, and then leopards, and the fox. It's decided to go fox instead of wolf with the head, and and then you've got a deer, and then you've got your floofy tail. Oh, that's right, we haven't painted the floofy tail. I keep forgetting the floofy tail. So floofy tail, we have to decide what the floofy tail. Hey, Bob and Julie, actually, since you're on, like, this part, because we've got feathers, but then we've got this part down here. Were you thinking that was kind of just spirit energy, or is there an animal or a thing that was supposed to be the part down here on the bottom of the tail? Julie sculpts the best animals, Miss Dimp, in my opinion. Well, I don't know. I guess it's between her and Weeby. She and Jason, because Jason also has got a really good grasp of animal anatomy. Yeah, but their styles are totally different, right? Energy or plant? Plant. Interesting. Well, now I'll think about it. Because I might do energy. I was thinking about going with magenta down there. But it depends on how our antlers turn out today. All right, cool. Well, we'll rock on it. We haven't got to not forget the tail, though. I keep forgetting the tail. All right, so we're going to do antlers today. And I decided to just pretty much keep the Spirit Beast there, so... Yeah, exactly. Well, I like to, when you're at ReaperCon, guys, never be afraid to ask the sculptors, like, if they had a vision for a particular part of the model. Like, if you really can't tell, like, you're not sure what the theme was or how to paint something or, things like that, you can always ask the sculptors. I mean, sometimes they won't really have, an opinion, just because sometimes they're working from concept art or whatever, but it never hurts. So since I had a Bob and Julie, I decided to ask a Bob and Julie. So we're painting this with an extremely limited palette, y'all remember. We're actually using a couple Pathfinder colors and then a couple core colors to paint this model. And those colors are, I'm going to get it up to in focus. Since I've got the antlers in focus, I don't want to get out of focus. So we are using these colors. And the blue is a magical chemical mixture of the jade and the magenta. Yeah, Motor City Ray, you bet. So yeah, and hello Threads of Fate. So yeah, so we're doing all these, and that's what we're gonna do. And today I think I want to go more brown with the antlers, and the closest thing we have to a brown is going to be a mixture of clear magenta and black. So I'm going warm with the antlers. Since I wanted to do some magenta, you can see the purple there. I wanted to do some magenta down the back anyway, and I wanted to do some on the tail. Putting magenta up top and then putting magenta down low is as I drop everything is a good way to repeat patterns of colors on the model. When you're doing a model and you want it to look cohesive, but now I need to find things. There's my tail. Julie, I lost your tail. Better than losing my own tail. There we go. All right, so when you use colors on a model, you want to repeat them around the model. So in this case, the magenta is going to be the warmest color, and it's going to really attract the eye. So using it up near the face is a good deal. And then also repeating it down here on the tail will make the eye, and a little bit on the back will give us 3 points of magenta. It'll be horns, back, and bottom of the tail. And that will enable us to move the eye of the viewer around the model, because they'll naturally look at the face first, because that's where the eye tends to go, as it looks for faces and that warm color up there. Then it's going to travel down the back and see the freehand, and it's going to go to the tail and get the warmness at the last bit. And that is the plan anyway. So when you're planning your colors models out, and you're going to use a brighter color or a warmer color, consider where you're putting it, because that's going to attract the eye of the viewer. Color composition. All right, now I can move my chair back. There we are. Hey, Xandercles, good morning. Good morning, Gridlock. Yeah, it's a weird color interaction. You can see it in the wing here. the bluish color, and in the bluish color of the spots here, and the bluish color here on the legs, that's jade plus magenta. It's one of the weirdest pigment interactions that occurs. It's just a way those colors cross each other. And it doesn't just, you don't have to just mix them. You can just glaze them over one another, because here on the wing, I was definitely glazing it over, glazing the magenta over the green, and I still got the blue. So it's a way the pigments just interact with each other visually. All right, so let's do that. Let's go with our magenta. I am going to mix up all my colors just in case I want to touch up anything or spot anything. I think I am going to move the tail off today because I don't want to knock it off again onto the floor. So let's do... Uh-oh. I might have dog emergency, guys. Yeah, I've got dog emergency. Hey, Justin, I need you. Dog emergency.
Yeah,
Be right back.
problem. Oh, no. All right. How's everyone doing tonight? Or tonight? This morning. Oh, Orion, you better get back to work. Tell us about yourself. Hey, thank you, Janky. Thanks for that, Orion. There is a link to that website. Hold on a second, Twist. The problem is I don't know if you can actually order swag bags yet, because last I checked, Adrian was still organizing kind of what was going to be going in them. I believe. I'm not. Oh, actually, it's funny you asked that because our meetings are Wednesday afternoons, so that is definitely something I can ask her about today. Also, my allergies are terrible today. If anyone hasn't noticed, it's just one of those days, I guess. As it gets hotter in Texas, every pollen source in the world decides to just release. Ah, see, okay, so there we go. Look at that. Bob and Julie have some insider information. So, Corona holder. I've seen that pop up a couple of times. Uh, Taz, is that the thing that I believe is that the thing we talked about in Reaper Live? I think 2 Thursdays ago, or is that the thing that didn't release? Is what I'm asking, Taz, or the one that was supposed to release, kind of thing. Th- Thank you, Orion. That's fantastic. Yes, yes, Taz. Yeah, that thing. Um, we are not releasing that. I think we decided, I don't remember what reason they finally landed on, but like I think they decided they just weren't going to release it. Doesn't mean that maybe a year or two or three from now you might see a release of it, but we'll see.
I am back. There.
Oh,
Squeaky
and
ball.
back.
Hear the squeaky ball, everybody? Yeah. Kiri is jubilant. She's like, I did my thing, and now I can squeak my ball. Alright, so thanks for your patience, everybody. For my old dog who, when she's gotta go, she's gotta go. So, and now she's super proud of herself and squeaking her ball during stream, because that's Kiri. Alright, so that's about 4 drops, more or less. 4 drops, maybe 5 drops of magenta. I want a higher load of magenta than black. I want the magenta to still come through. I don't want the black to overwhelm it. Kiri. Apparently Kiri is going to be an on-stream personality today, Justin. I forgot to warn you.
Oh no, I'm more than welcome it.
Okay. Let me see here. Yeah, ball time misstamp, exactly. Oh wow. I see the corona holder is gonna not go. Well, that's a good call.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had actually released a statement on that because I know we had talked about it two,
Yeah.
3, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then I know we decided to not release it. I just didn't know we had told people yet.
Yeah, it's funny, not funny, pretty much. So it's like, yeah. All right. So good. So now we've got 1 drop. And remember, I'm using Besmara Black because it's not quite as strong as Pure Black. And I like that. That's when you're mixing with it, sometimes that's an advantage if you're trying not to overwhelm your underlying color. Because Pure Black is incredibly strong. And even so, Besmara is strong enough. So we'll see. Yes, Kiri is definitely loves her squeaky balls. I got her 2 packages the other week, and David had never experienced dog with squeaky ball before. So he's had kind of the crash course in dog ownership because he grew up, his mom was allergic, so he never grew up with animals, with furry animals. So he does not know how ridiculous they can be. All right, I think I need a couple more drops of this magenta. There we go. Clear magenta is really strong. Like, never think, and people will tell you this, and they know nothing. Okay, well, they know something, but they just don't know what they're talking about with pigments. But they would look at this and tell you, oh, the black is really strong, that magenta must not have much pigment in it. That's absolutely incorrect. Clear magenta is one of our most heavily pigmented paints, but what you're dealing with here is actually the attributes of each pigment and how fine the pigment grind is and what the dispersion rate is. This is not a reflection of how much pigment is in the color, the fact that the black overwhelms this. It's actually just the nature of the clear magenta to be extremely a weaker color and a color that is easily overwhelmed by... Hello, Kiri. You are just disruptive today. Yes, I know. I love you. Can you go sit down? Can you settle and sleep? She's like, but I had my nap. I'm good. So never think that just because a color is stronger, it means the pigment count is lower. It's actually the attribute of the pigment that you're dealing with. Oh yeah, no, he really likes Kiri now, Twisted Oma. Hey there, Achilles Blade, how's it going? Yes, exactly. I agree, Motor City Ray. But yeah, David didn't know what he was missing until Kiri came, but now it's good. He except when she wants to squeak her ball when we're trying to sleep or something. But
Kiri's definitely one of those dogs it would, even for people who aren't really dog people, she's pretty impossible not to like.
Yeah.
Just coexist. Like, she's so sweet and as lovable as it gets too, and she's very gentle too. I think I like that about her, especially since she's a big dog. So
yeah, her breed is generally like that. They're known for their gentleness, and I think almost every Shiloh that I've had, with the exception of possibly Thorn, who is Bull in China shop dog, has had that certain element of gentleness for their size, which is very nice. And even Thorn has that when he wants to. I mean, because he went to live with John and Farah, and they have little baby kittens all the time. And he's actually surprisingly good with the little kittens. So there we go. Yeah, so this is a nice, very, very pretty color. See, a pretty color. Black and magenta seriously makes a pretty color. And we're just going to base coat these wings dark because I want some contrast. Our model is very light so far, and so I really want to get some of the contrast up here. I guess I technically have to say that we are adding other colors in, though, since I did do the tan color for the hooves, since I wanted to give them white socks. So I did add in a different color, and now that I have added in that color, I should really utilize it somewhere else in the model. So I'll probably use it to highlight these horns. Now I have to remember what I did. Oh yeah, I remember. I remember what colors I used. So I'm using a round brush, I'm using a thinner brush because of these grooves in the horns. I could use a bigger brush, but I want an even coat, so. And once again, this is, I'm not priming. This is just painted bare on the bones. I washed this model beforehand. Oh, I also have some little strings on that horn. Let's see. Gridlock. I have a bunch of MSP that has separated quite completely, meaning it's been sitting in a box for like 10 years, Gridlock? Or was it frozen? Like, what happens to make it separate? Yeah, dogs are totally winning, you're right, this year because of everybody being home. Pardon me, I'm just trying to catch up on chat, peeps. Midnight Painter, I don't think I actually added I did not add any water to this as far as I can remember. I might have added one. I guess I did because it is a little thin. So I might have added a drop of water, or a brush full of water is what I tend to instinctually do. So probably at that point about 6 or 7 to 1 as far as paint to water. But because the clears are in a thinner body base, they're in a medium body base instead of a thick bodied base, a little bit goes quite a ways. Especially with the transparency of the magenta, because this is almost all magenta. It's like 6 drops of clear magenta plus 1 drop of Besmara black. So because it's so magenta, it's going to thin down and go clear very quickly, and that's why you're not seeing a ton of coverage. That said, the black does give it more coverage than it would naturally have. 5+ years. Yeah. Well, if you shake it like a demon and it won't go back into solution, Gridlock, that would be death. That would be doom. You might, if you want to, you can stick a toothpick in there and stir the paint around, see if you can get it started. Because the problem is the agitator is probably in the middle of that glop of latex or resins that's in the paint, the plug, so to speak. And so it's not gonna, the agitator isn't working essentially to re-agitate the paint. So you could try taking, something to use as an agitator, like a glass bead or a piece of sprue or something like that. Or even, some companies sell high quality steel ball bearings, which apparently do work. Just be careful not to use something like BBs, which are much lower quality steel and will rust. But yeah, so you can try that, stir it with a toothpick, put an agitator in there, and then shake it. If you can get the paint back that way, you will have to do that to the whole set to save your paint. What I always tell people, the first thing when they say, how do I make my paint last? The first thing is to shake your paints every 1 or 2 years. You want to shake them at least that often. If you shake MSP just like once a year or once every 2 years, give it a really good shaking, get it back in solution, your paint will last for over a decade, maybe even over a decade and a half, with no issues. But if you leave it sit, it will settle out. All paint will do this. It's the surfactants in it that keep it in solution are only good for, they can't hold up those resins forever. If there's no movement whatsoever and no agitation, they will settle out because paint is naturally, the resins are naturally heavier than the water that they're in, the water base. So, and although surfactants are made to keep the resins in solution, and obviously they do a good job because they'll do it for a couple of years, but with enough time, it will settle out. Let's see. Let's see, just reading, catching up on chat here, guys. It does separate after a couple days of sitting, but that's not what I'm talking about, Francis. Like, that's fine. Yeah. Like, even it'll separate. It can be up to a year or two that you don't touch it. It'll naturally separate out. And it depends on the color, right? As how much it separates. It also depends on the pigments. Some pigments will float easier and faster than others. But as far as permanency goes, if you leave it for a couple of years, I'm going to take these antlers off so I can get the underside a little bit easier, everybody. I'm going to promptly get paint all over my fingers, but who cares? Yeah, a little separation in the bottle after a day or two of sitting is natural. That's not danger. It's after it's like a year, and then the resins actually settle out. It's not just the pigment kind of settling a bit in the water. Essentially, the resins will start to settle out, and they'll just kind of sit there happily being particulate for a very long time. But inevitably they're all during that time they're compacting and compacting and compacting, and they're squeezing that lightweight water out from between their little particles. And when they successfully squeeze all that water out by their weight and the fact that they are heavier than the water, and it separates completely, then the latex or acrylic or whatever you're using will just essentially form a solid plug, because there's nothing separating those particles anymore, so they will bond to each other. And at that point, your paint is done. Freezing, the reason freezing is so bad for paint is because it does this preemptively. It separates the water by turning it into crystals, and of course the water will then be forced out, and so the paint will separate, and then it will freeze, right? The water will freeze. The resin doesn't turn into ice, but the water does. And so essentially freezing forcibly separates your paint, and that's gets the same result through a different method. And just like with long time separation, the freezing will permanently affect your paint. Unless, I mean, remember that to get this stuff in solution and to have it actually stick to itself and stay in solution, paint companies use big industrial, like big time mixers, like much more powerful generally than anything. More powerful than the stuff you get when you see them throw the paint can into the mixer at the paint store, that is not even like close to the amount of velocity that a industrial mixer is going to put into an initial paint mix, like to get resins and surfactants and the water to all play and bond together nicely. So your little handshaking is just not enough. Like, you might be able to put that stuff back in solution hypothetically if you had something the force of a giant industrial spinner, but obviously not practical to do it for every bottle, right? Yeah, well, just go through and shake them. Like I said, Gridlock, if there are colors this is time to prune your paint, right? Go through those colors, decide, okay, this is a color I'm never going to need. Anne never mentions this color, I won't need it. And maybe chuck the ones that you don't really care about. The rest of them, like I said, stir them with a toothpick a bit and put something in there to agitate her, or just try the toothpick and see if you can do it. Add a little extra water because you're going to want to give something in there to help, because they've also thickened over time. And then shake them vigorously, see if they come back, right? It's been 5 years, which shouldn't be a total death knell. Chances are that the paint is kind of in a goopy slurry at the bottom of the bottle, but you may be able to save them. Just be selective. Oh, the caps on your bottles. Actually, you should be able to order... I think you can order extra caps. Maybe, I thought we had... Justin, do we have a thing of just caps? Maybe we don't.
Caps? Like,
yeah, extra caps from MSP, like the black or the white.
I don't think so. I've never seen that as a product, but that doesn't mean that
Okay,
it
yeah.
didn't exist at one point.
I mean,
I don't think we currently have it. But...
Yeah, like, because when our caps get really, really old, there is definitely a natural attrition that happens. And it's not a flaw, so it's not like, your paint broke. You had it for years to get that effect.
Right. That's just plastic in general, I'd say,
Yeah.
It eventually just becomes brittle.
Yeah, you should be able to order caps somewhere online for 1 ounce or for 1.5 ounce dropper bottles. But yeah, Heather, otherwise, you may want to look around. I mean, a lot of companies do 1/2 ounce droppers, so you may be able to find caps, or you may be able to contact Reaper and ask if you can buy caps, if there's any way that you can do it. Because I know we do sell a set of empty bottles, so, but depends on how many paints are affected and whether you want to go through all that trouble. But really all you need is a new cap. You really don't need a new bottle. Unless you do want a fresh bottle with, say, a fresh nipple, because sometimes the nipples can get cloggy as they get very old. So, I mean, in that case, you may just want to go for it and just get buy fresh bottles for the paints you really like. Yeah, Vortex Shaker should be fine. Even a Vortex won't do it beyond a certain point, Ray. If it really goes down and goes to plastic plug, yeah, even a Vortex won't. But if you've got any hope, if you've got any water in between those resin particles still, there are shakers that'll bring it back. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've heard about the Vortex shakers. I'm just in such a habit of shaking my paint. And I mean, I definitely have a set of paint that I use more often. So it stays in solution pretty well. Let me see. Antlers are drying, so I'm looking at other things that I can paint while antlers are drying. 1 second. Mix up the rest of my colors. I said I was going to mix up the rest of my colors, and then I didn't. So let's get our green up and running. This is such a pretty color. If you haven't ordered Tianxia Jade from Pathfinder, it is such a pretty color. Yeah. 50's rough. Oh, okay. Thanks, Motor City Ray. $3.69 for 12 caps, white only. All right. That's actually not too bad given what they cost us. Alrighty, where's my water? I want 1 drop of water. There we are. All right, have fun, Orion. Or have not fun. Hey, Mike Disney, how's it going? Let's see, what do we got? Oh, thanks for the SKU, Declearman. Declearman with the save. I thought we did. Because I know that, that plastic does tend to just collapse eventually. So I couldn't think we wouldn't. We get enough contacts about it. Thanks for the plug, Planer, everybody. Planer just plugged my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. I do awesome stuff over there. I do a lot of PDFs. I'm actually working almost done with a PDF right now on some of the Dungeon Dwellers colors and triads for them and other uses than just for like goblin skin. I actually really like the goblin skin color and think it's very useful outside of goblins. So, and I also am going over troll flesh and orc flesh this month. So stay tuned if you are a patron. Now this is where you really see it, right? I put this glaze of magenta over this mint green, and what color did it turn? It turned blue. So now you can see that color interaction that I was talking about. Decided I would just play with that while I was waiting for my antlers to dry.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys found it, because I was actually looking for it, because I remember actually seeing the triad thing, like, full of caps, and but I never know when they just yank products off the website, because that does tend to happen. You could wake up tomorrow morning and have something just removed, and we don't know about it until we ask Ron.
Yeah, sometimes stuff that just doesn't sell a lot of, or it's not. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, Twisted Oma, sorry that you had that issue. I'm glad that you managed to get back among us. I didn't see any drop frame rates on my OBS, so I'm hoping it's not me.
No, Error 2000 is typically on Twitch, unfortunately. That's the because sometimes you'll just drop connection, so you have to refresh.
I see. Putting in some more green at the bottom of this. I like to just, I'm liking at this point, I'm just liking to mess around with some colors and get some nice subtle variation. Since I have all my colors open for the most part, except for my white, which I really need right now, actually. Let's get that. Wow, most useful triads is all your mileage may vary, Astro Squee. It depends on what sort of painter you are, what level you're at, and what topics you tend to be drawn to. I mean, I use a lot of wacky colors. Look at what I'm using now, for gosh sakes. But yeah, it depends. Like, because the skin tone triads are definitely useful. And if you haven't picked up the skin tones from Bones, at least if you're going to paint any African or dark-skinned ethnicity models, pick up Ebony Flesh and Ruddy Flesh. Those are the two African skin tones in Bones paint line, and it's 9440 and 9441. And they work well if you put a Pathfinder skin color right between them. So it's an unofficial triad. The Mwangi Brown is the African skin tone for Pathfinder, and it goes right between those two other colors really well. So that's something to keep in mind. So I'm getting kind of an almost opalescent color here now, and I may accentuate that because I had that kind of on the tail. So I may mix some clear magenta with some white and bring in some pink highlights at the top of this, the top of the fur here. While we wait for our antlers to dry. There, that brings in some highlight color a little bit more. I can always glaze it with some more magenta if I want to bring it back down. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I always tell people to pick up the basics. If you're going to pick up, you know, triads, make sure you've got a good strong red triad that you really like. Make sure you've got, I tend not to use triads for blues. I tend to mix, but a good strong blue triad works. The blues in Bones are kind of triad-y, meaning you could pick up like Oceanic, Tropical, and whatever the next one is, and they more or less work as a triad. Let's see here. All right, I think my antlers are about dry. Yeah, so I'll mix up my brown color, which you will recall was one of my favorites. Oh, and the other thing you really want is a good leather set. Yeah, Bones yellows are good. Oh, nice, Danatoro. Is that yeah, the core yellows? Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's not bad. Not a bad choice at all. All right, so what we did, let me see if I can find my skin tone here. I am getting a little cluttered up on my desk. I need to clean it off. Somebody asked me the other day, by the way, how I keep my desk so like uncluttered. And I'm terrible about clutter, but what I've been doing lately is I have a little caddy that's on wheels that has 2 drawers in it. I actually bought it with my desk and unfortunately did not use it for this purpose until very recently. But all the colors that I use the most frequently are in my caddy. And it's right down here. I can just reach down to this drawer, slide it open, slide it closed, and grab my paint. So there are a few enough paints in here. I would say maybe 50, 60 colors that I use a lot. And I'm always tuning it. So if there's a color that I start using a lot, I'll put it in there and I'll take out a color that I haven't used in ages that I think is just cluttering it up at this point. So that way, when I'm done with painting, I can just put those paints right back down into my caddy. I also have a box of paint that's sorted by baggy by color. So reds, oranges, greens, etc. Light browns, dark browns, yada yada. And that's when I'm picking out something that I don't use as often, say like the orc skin that I'm using right now for my PDF. Those colors will go back. I'll sort those back after the session or after they're done, whenever I'm done working with them. But in general, I have a nice selection of colors across a gamut in my drawer, so I can always reach for something that's useful. I also put together project bags where if I'm using a selection of colors for a project that I don't normally use at all, I'll just get a little Ziploc bag and put those colors in there so that I have them to hand and together so I can always find them. So the colors that we're using for our hooves, and thus for highlighting our antlers, hypothetically, is a mixture. And the reason that I chose this mixture is that I wanted a lightish brown, because when I looked at horse hooves with white socks, it seemed like they were that. But they also were a little fleshy. So I thought if I mixed my light brown with my tan skin, I would get a nice color that would work. And sure enough, we ended up with a very, very nice color to use for hooves. So that was just me following my gut, and that's a good way to go. Let me see. Yeah, white, pink, light green palette is crazy, huh? Let's see here. That's not bad, Francis. Just buy a color because you like it is never a bad thing. Yeah, just a drawer from like a little drawer, right? Like this is a really short little thing, and the nice thing is, of course, that the top is level, so I can also put stuff up there. But then I've got 2 drawers and kind of an undershelf. It is kind of like a bedside table, only it's an art caddy. It was made to go with my art desk. Let's see, maybe I can. Let me see. So currently, I have a bunch of crap on top of it. Let me see out here. There it is. It's kind of there. This is my drawer. I can just slide it in and out if I need it. I've got some stuff that I'm working on up here. Little project bags that for projects I'm working on. But yeah, that's what I do. I do love my camera. It's so versatile. There we go. Okay, let's mix up this color. Yeah, well, and that's not a bad way to buy paint, Trouble. I mean, let's do 4 drops of driftwood brown. One of my favorite. This is one of my favorite browns. For those of you who do not have driftwood, it makes a fantastic leather triad if you are mixing it with 91.99 russet brown. Also one of my favorite browns. Like, essentially, if you want a neutral dark brown leather that doesn't really clash with anything and has a nice soft highlight to it, these guys mixed together. Start with mostly this, highlight to mostly this with a touch of stained ivory. And it makes a great leather if you're looking for a leather that's not too orange and not too yellow and not too red. If you want a neutral leather. Let's see here. Purple green. Well, Nerp, they make color shift paints, and that's really the best thing to use for that. Like the easiest, right? One coat, you're done. The chameleon paints, I don't remember. There's a bunch of companies that do them. Well, Real Chibi, exactly. But the craft paints aren't the only ones that have the color shift paints. Pretty much everybody kind of jumped on that bandwagon. Like, I think Turbo Dork is the one that is the brand that I have. I'm going to do 2 drops of the tan skin with 4 drops. I got a bunch of glob of dried paint in my thingy. Take that out. Get out of there. Get out, little tan skin. There. We are just getting so off topic today. But yes. So, color shift. Spaz sticks, haven't heard anything about them. But, I mean, it's all... Guys, there's so few people that make that color shift flake that you can be assured that any paint manufacturer using color shift is using one of maybe a couple of manufacturers in the world. And so the flake is all going to be the same. What's going to differ is the base. So definitely find a paint consistency that you like when you're looking at that stuff. Like, the paint consistency, the flake's going to be the same. The paint consistency is going to vary if you're doing color shift. And beetles and such are the best way to do color shift. The other way to do it, honestly, hold on. Nerp. Yeah, it's going to be the easiest way. The other way to do it, Nerp, would be to, like, use a darkish rich purple and just highlight over it with green, like streak green over it. And that will, just using 2 colors that are unusual together will give you kind of a faux iridescent look, just like I'm getting on Mr. Spirit Beast here by highlighting green with pink. You just need to suggest it, really. So that's one. Color shift, be easy. Be sure to undercoat your color shift with a very dark color Works best that way. Yep. Yeah, they have been around for ages. There are a lot more companies doing them now, Miss Dim. Yeah, I can see that. RC car. Yep. Everybody pretty much jumped on the boat, except Reaper really didn't. We didn't feel the need because when everybody else in the world is doing a thing, then unless you think you can do it better, to higher quality, or cheaper, then you really, there's not a real reason to put it in your line, to waste the SKU on it. So I was originally looking at sourcing a true iridescent paint, which is different than color shift. But then the company just kind of seemed to disappear, which is a real shame because their product was really funky and awesome. But there we go. We're going to highlight. Now I can get this on top of the spirit animal head. Get on there. Boop. And we can go back to highlighting. But yeah, it's like if I can't do something unusual and better than other companies, or if we can't do it cheaper or make it more accessible, then it's like, well, we're better off putting resources into developing other things because everybody can get this already from other companies. So I'm using this tan color to kind of highlight the striations in the horn. And I'm using, I'm kind of freehanding it, but technically you might be able to use side brushing. It's a hard call. The texture isn't as standout as like some stuff that I was doing on feathers yesterday, so you might just glob if you try to do it any other way. I think I'm also going to mix some white with my black magenta. Throw some water into it. And I'm going to keep this for shading, but then I'm going to transfer some of this over to another thing and put a drop of white in it so that I can use both my purple and my tan together on the horns. Yeah, we had a gloss black ages ago, but it's really hard to find these days, Mist Imp, in a base. And that's not solvent based. Yes, Reaper Discord is a thing if you're not already on it. Go over and hang out with everyone. People post some fun stuff on there. There we go. So that actually gives you an idea what color this actually is. I always say if you see a really dark color and you're not sure what color it actually is, what pigments it might have in it, add some white. So this tells you that this is a very pinkish, so it has a lot of red, i.e. magenta, in it. It is a little bit of a bluish shift, that's why it's a cool red. And it's kind of gray, so it has black in it. So I'm going to try to use both of these colors as highlighters and see what I like. Oh, except translucent crystals. Yeah, I mean, you could do it. That's interesting because the color will pass through it. It'll give you a very subtle effect, Francis. The color shift paint is just like metallics. How I always tell you guys, I need to mix up some thicker stuff. I missed a spot. How I always tell you guys to put a dark base coat on metallics because it actually works with the paint to make it more shiny. So if you paint translucent models with it, you're not going to get as strong a color shift. It's going to be really pale and opalescent because the flake is really made to work against a dark base. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, so like 6 or 7 drops of magenta and a little bit of Besmara black will give you a very, very pretty black magenta. The more magenta you have in it, the more red it's going to be. And the more black you have, the more you get this glorious dark purple. So I'm going to take some of that and mix it in. Make it a little darker. There we go. But yeah, so this is a very, very pretty set of purples. Oh, good. Hi, 20-Sided TV. Welcome. Welcome to the community. Oh, cool. Excellent. Yeah, no problem. It's good to see you here. We are spreading the Reaper love every day. every day during the week. I am here, except I am off on Memorial Day. I did ask for that because David and I are going to cook. And that may require some serious time. So that seems to become one of our hobbies, is cooking together now. He likes to say he's just a sous chef, but he's actually getting pretty darn good with the grill, I think. The new grill. But yeah, if you have any questions, 20-sided, just, speak up. Everybody is free to ask questions of Anne during these, and I will answer them as best I can. I've got a little bit of plastic that I was trying to clean the model, and obviously I missed a tiny bit there. With bones, it's never a problem after you started painting to go back and kind of shave that stuff off. You can always just grab a little bit more of your base coat and paint it right on, and it'll stick. Yeah, he was, he likes to say he wasn't a great cook. I mean, he knows how to make a few things that, he would make for himself before I moved in and disrupted his life. He makes a good spaghetti carbonara. But now, since I moved in, I love to cook. And of course, during all of the socially isolating stuff, it makes sense to cook. Like, we could order out. We live near a place in Mountain View that has a lot of restaurants, and most of them are offering carry out. So we could order out, but that's not good for our waistlines or our wallets. So, and since I like to cook already, I was already cooking the majority of my meals every week. When I was in Texas still working for Reaper, I was very much only going out like once. Once a week I would let myself get sushi for Paint Club, and that was it. So I was already in the habit of cooking everything, cooking all my meals. So when I moved in, then we just kept doing that. Oh yeah, the Bones 5 Kickstarter paints are good. Like, a lot of those are colors that I made privately for myself because I needed those colors in my life. Like Orchid Purple. And Leaf Bud Green. I use Orchid Purple all the time. And then, of course, Black Indigo, which I made as a Reapercon color, and then I used it constantly. So I was like, we really need this to go into general production. So I'm just kind of highlighting. I've got a little bit of shine going on. I think that was probably... Sometimes purples can do that. Is they can give you a little extra shine. In which case, it's time to reach for Brush On Sealer. And try to damp that down a little. Shake the Brush On Sealer very well, because matting agents are heavy and they will settle out. So you really don't want to see the bead sticking to the bottom of your bottle of Brush On Sealer. You want to see this. You want to see the bubbles of sealer against it. If you see a little solid layer of beige or white there, you need to shake it more to get your matting agent in solution. If you don't do that, then you're going to get to half a bottle and suddenly your sealer is going to go really frosty because you have all that matting agent that you haven't been getting in solution. I'm going to put 4 drops of sealer down. I'm going to grab a brush full of water, because if you add a little water, the sealer goes more matte. And if you really want a matte sealer, you can grab your anti-shine additive. Do I have it over here? Yeah, I do. This is what anti-shine additive is good for. If you want a really flat sealer, and this is not flat enough for you, you can add a tiny bit. I mean tiny, guys. When I say add a tiny bit of anti-shine additive, I'm talking like... Let me see if I can squeeze it out. I'm going to need to get a pokey tool. Or maybe I'll just pop the top off and show you. So when I say a tiny bit of anti-shine additive, I am talking like... maybe that much. Tiny bit, not even a drop. To make it more matte. And even then, I will be very cautious with it. That might be a lot. I'll actually add a couple more drops of sealer to that. So, you can use anti-shine additive to control the matteness level of your brush-on sealer. But be very, very careful, because this stuff is super strong. It goes a long way. I could also, if I had noted that I was going to get a little bit of a glossy finish before on the horns, I could also have just added it to the purple. But I didn't think of it. I wasn't doing it. So now I will just seal over the top of it and then paint. So I like my paints matte. I do think I need to add a little bit of water. It doesn't make your sealer chunky, Sigwolf. Frosty. It will frost. Too much matting agent. It's like when you get dull coat, like, or a sealer, a matte sealer out in the weather, and it frosts on you. That's what can happen. So essentially, our matting agent is a really fine particulate, and so you can get very, very frosty if you overload it. It will overpower the paint you are using at some point. Sealer, okay, wow, lots of varnish lately. Okay, so if you are talking about varnish as a sealing coat, anti-shine additive is not a sealing coat. It is a medium meant to matte out paint and sealers. Brush-on sealer is a sealing coat. It is a finishing coat. However, I use it for all sorts of applications like controlling finish and making washes and glazes. It works as a matte medium as well as a sealer. When it comes down to it, they are often very similar. But yeah, varnish is a weird term here in the States. We usually just say sealer, and varnish is its own chemical entity that is usually solvent-based, or at least uses a whole different chemical profile. This is just brush-on sealers here in the States are just like paint. It's just paint base, but usually with a different resin content so that it's harder. Because Sethany wash medium was actually created because I was using a particular mixture to create my washes. And I just still habitually just use the medium that I originally created. So I hand mix my wash medium. Wash medium was a shortcut for people who were frustrated when I told them, we'll mix 3 drops of this and 2 drops of, and 4 drops of this and 2 drops of this. And so I decided to make wash medium so they wouldn't have to remember the formula. So I remember the formula, and I just habitually mix it at this point. So I don't use wash medium because I already, I know the formula by heart, and I just do it. But the other reason is that not using the formula allows me to fine-tune my wash better, or my glaze. Although usually I do not use this for glazing. I don't like the gummy texture that it gives, so whether I use brush-on sealer to mix my glazes is entirely due to what am I doing with it. So let's see. Painted a layer of matte sealer over the top there. It's that and a little bit of extra, it's a little bit of a different formulation, but yes, Sethany, in general, 90% of the way, yeah, it's that plus a little, I tweaked it, right? I tweaked the wash medium a bit because I tend to tweak the brush on sealer and water thing. So it's stronger, a little bit stronger. Let's see here, just catching up on questions. Yeah, brush-on sealer does work as a primer for translucent minis. Absolutely. I'm glad it worked for you, 20-sided TV. Yeah, yesterday there was a long conversation about varnishes, wash mediums, and sealers. And varnish in the old days was a particular chemical compound that had nothing, that was totally different. It's like varnish you put on wood, right? Which is a very, very different thing than what people call what they put on paints to seal it, which I'm assuming is what you're calling varnish. But sealers and mediums tend to be the same thing, which is much like a paint base. It's going to be a resin in a water base and with various stuff added to it. So that's why I can use my sealer as a medium, because it's kind of the same beast, tweaked just a little. Okay, that took my shine down a bit. I didn't want to go too overboard with the sealer. Let's see here. Back to work. We are definitely having a lot of questions and discussion today. Yeah, the other thing for you, 20-sided TV, the other thing that people use as a primer on bones all the time is the liners. But of course, with translucent bones, that would not work as well. I painted the Water Weird translucent model, and I actually did not use any primer. I just washed it. So that works also. You don't have to prime them. I never prime them. So we've got some highlights going down on ye old. Oh, I've got a little bit of, there we go. Now you can see. A little bit of highlights going down the horns. Haha. Oh, pretend. Never, Max Styles. Go be smart. Stefan Mack, the best advice I can give you on doing very pale skin is start with your shadow color and then highlight up from there. I always get into trouble when I'm trying to do really pale skin. If I start too light, I end up going back and almost repainting the whole thing. I've done it a couple times on busts recently, so yeah, larger model. And one of them was on, let's see, do I have my Dryad? I might have my Dryad. One second. Let me grab a model. Where is she? There she is. Doop. So this is a big bust. And I wanted her to have really luminous skin. And she's not done. I'm still working on her skin up here. But notice how dark I started. Like this color, this kind of pale. It's almost like orc flesh, but it's a little bit greener. So when I started her, I actually started with something a lot lighter. Really pale normal skin tone. And what I found is that I couldn't get these shadows, these nice shadows around her eyes and stuff, was I just felt like everything was very flat and I couldn't get the depth I wanted very easily. So I went back and I base coated her again using, you know, what isn't really a really light color, right? It's not close to white at all. And what that lets me do is it lets me slowly bring up my highlights, like here and up here on her face. So that, here, let me, actually, you can see it a little better if I put a white background on. There you go. So that lets me slowly bring things up. And I can still go up to pure white up here, right? I can still make her very pale and luminous, but I have the shadow colors in there that I need. Because when you're working on a bigger model, you know, you don't want it to look too flat. So you do want some shadows. So I'm going to take her up to pure white, and she'll end up very, very pale. But having started with this color, I can keep this darker color in the shadows where I want it, like under her nose and the eyes here and around here, you know, and maybe under the face over here. And it's a lot easier that's a lot easier for me. Now, some people probably don't have trouble starting light and working dark, but with paint, I do find that it's a lot more natural to me to reach for highlighting. And sometimes I won't take my shadows as dark as they need to be, or I won't have a good base for my highlights if I start too pale. So, just a thought. She's just starting. Yeah, I'm going to probably redo the eyes. I'm not happy entirely with the eyes, but that's for those, here's a shameless plug for a bust maker that I really like over in Poland. That model is from a company called Creepy Tables. I really love. Powell is an awesome guy, and his models are really cool. Yeah, so start a little darker than you think, and then build up your highlights and your midtones and your highlights. I just think it's really easy. And I had this problem as a 2D artist also. I would always fail to make my shadows as dark as they could be. And so I noticed that I'm a little timid on acrylic paint as well with that. If you find you have the opposite problem where you like putting your darks in and you're tentative about your highlights, then you may get better mileage starting with midtone and working down and up. Everybody's different, but just a tip from me about a problem that I had. I think on big models, large scale like that, because that's easily a 1/10 scale bust, it's hard sometimes to you have to be careful with shadows because you can get too harsh with them very easily on a large model like that because it casts its own shadows naturally because it's big. So the way to get around that is to just start with your shadow color and always go up. Then you know that you're not making your shadows too dark. And if you are, you can always put a wash over or a glaze over to kind of adjust it. Yeah, I want to get back to that Dryad. I've got another cool female bust I'm working on right now, and I'm trying to get her done first before I go back to Ms. Dryad. But I am really trying to attack my shelf of shame this year. Yeah, techniques are everything. I mean, the nice thing about being painting for a long time, Stephen, is that you probably have pretty good brush control. I mean, almost inevitably, that's the thing that will always slowly improve over years of painting is brush control. So then it's just learning paint consistency, like how thin do you make your paints to get the effects that you want. And that's just practice and experimentation. I mean, there are formulas out there, but thinning paint varies by what line of paint you're using and even by what color you're using, especially with a line like Master Series, where the coverage of each of these paints is largely dependent on the pigment qualities, like a traditional artist line would be. So you can, that's why I never give people a straight up, like this many drops of water to make a wash, this many drops of water for layering. I can give you a ballpark, and I often have in the past, but it's better if you just learn to look at it and kind of experiment and see, oh, if it looks this way in my palette, then it's gonna do this, right? If I can see the side of my palette through this color, I know how transparent it is, and so I can do that with it. Learning to thin your paints is a huge part of leveling up, as is getting a really good brush that keeps a really, really, really good tip. So a good quality sable. If you take good care of your brushes, a good quality sable brush will level you up almost instantly. And it's worth the money. It lasts so much longer than cheapo brushes. Well, there can't be, right, Miss Temp? Every base is different qualities. Every pigment has a different grind and opacity. There cannot be one ratio for thinning. It's not magic. It's just science. I suppose then we have to quote the law, right? Any significantly advanced form of science is magic. So I do paint science, but apparently it's at the level of paint magic. Which kind of makes me a paint wizard, I guess. Technically, I believe on the Reaper forums I'm a paint goddess, but just a small demotion, a small promotion. Yeah, exactly. You've got it, Evelana. That's really the way to do it. And better yet, what that enables you to do is to work with any paint line or any color and still get good results, right? Because you're looking at the transparency of the paint and learning how it should look and how it should flow off your brush, and so you're going to be able to adjust to any paint line that you use, which is a big bonus. I'm just plopping in some little fine details here. Probably going to accentuate them. Let's see here. I'm just catching up on stuff. Oh no, two right wings. Yeah, that does sometimes happen in the packaging. Contact Reaper. Yeah, different lines are very different. Although when you get into miniatures paint specifically, there are several lines that are similar. Master Series, I think, is still the most different beast as far as that goes, because Vallejo, Scale 75, and P3, and even GW, at least in its basic line, tend to be very similar. I think I'm going to put a glaze on this. What do I want to do? How about a magenta glaze? That sounds fun. Let's do that. Let's see here. Pop some magenta up into here. I just feel like I want to tie these together. My highlight is a little bit too light for my shadow. Maybe I'll use a tiny bit of this in here to give it some opacity and to knock down that magenta a bit. I'm going to throw some water on it. This is what I mean when I say just learn how to thin it until it looks right, then play with it. Well, I mean, whenever you have a mispackaged mini, though, Nalinda, all you need to do is contact Reaper, and we'll dig up a part for you. I mean, if it was shipped that way, then it's a flawed product. So I'm gonna just try this. I'm gonna try to paint this glaze over the top of here. And since it's a glaze, I'm not gonna let it pool. It looks like I'm letting it pool right now, but I know I still have time to wick it off. So I'm gonna put it over this one horn and see if I like it. Now I have to clean off my brush, squeeze the water out, and wick off any excess. I don't want it to pool because I've added so much water that it's going to dry badly if I let it pool. So I'm just gently touching the surface to wick off any excess with the tip of my brush. Got to stop when it starts to dry because then it's going to go crazy. Oh, thanks for the raid, Valandar. Sweet, we were just doing some crazy stuff on the horns for our spirit beast. Spirit beast. This is the spirit beast sculpted by Julie Guthrie. He's very cute. I really like him. Like I was turning out, since he's a spirit beast, I'm doing all different kind of colors and textures on him, all different parts of different animals. So yeah. Thanks for the raid.
Welcome, Raiders.
Yes. Yeah. What Anki says, if you have a problem with a misshipped part for Reaper and you contact us, we will try very much to make it right. Everything we can do. So, all right, so here's an example of what a glaze does for you, right? Here we go. Let's get under camera. I'm going to push this back. All right, so I started out with this kind of dark magenta color, kind of black magenta, and I highlighted it with this lighter color that I used on the hooves. And that's what this side is. Then I decided I actually wanted it to go a bit more, a bit more unified. Like my brown was maybe a little bit too different for me. So I decided to mix up some magenta, which is a color that I've been using to mix this, with a little bit of white and that color in short, and which is a mixture of these two, and white, and put a glaze over it. So it's almost a clear magenta glaze. You can see how much that glaze has shifted the colors. This is what glazes are good for, guys. They're good for unifying brush strokes, and they're good for shifting color. So by putting that over the top, I shifted my dark a little bit lighter, and I shifted my light darker, but I also shifted everything more purple. So, which is something that I'm thinking I actually like on this beast. I may go back with this brown color and now I can go back with the brown color and hit a few more highlights, right? But I just I'm finding that this is a little bit too stark for me. There's too much difference between the base color and the color that I went up with. And this can happen. Sometimes you need a middle color in between. Sure, Mona Linda. But yeah, this also makes it pop, right? You've got it, Miss Imp. So instead of it kind of like being neutral, it makes it more visually interesting and ties it into the purples that I'm using on the other parts of the Spirit Beast. But I still have some of that brown in to tie this into the hooves. I'll probably still do some little details in that brown. So glazing is not washing. So a wash is what you would do if you want to like put texture on these and you wanted it to go even darker in the cracks or something. You put a wash on it and then you'd leave it to pool in the cracks. And a wash, as compared to this, if I was building a wash, the difference would probably be I would use a bit of sealer to keep it together, because that's what it does. It protects you. And the wash would be thicker. I would say maybe just a tiny bit more water. I'm watching, the great thing about a well palette with a porcelain well palette is you can kind of watch how it slides off the sides. So difference between a wash and a glaze. With a wash, you want it to be pretty strong down here, and it's a bit thicker. You want it to be thicker because if it's too thin like this, you can see this, I'm going to show you real close. Let's see. Can you see kind of the ring that's forming around the outside here? This dark ring that's forming around the outside of the paint thing. That's the effect, you know, when you thin your wash too much and then it dries with these little rings all over the place. That's the effect you don't want. Putting sealer in helps you keep away from that. But what this is telling you is this paint here is too thin to be a wash. It's a glaze. Glazes are thinner. They're made to shift color or to blend color. And the reason is that a glaze is applied super thin and then you don't let it pool. If you let it pool, you get those rings. Oh no, ad bots. I'm sorry, Valandar. We need an extermination service. Alright, I'm going to add some water to this. Yeah, we got very distracted today, and we didn't get as much done as I had hoped on our horns. We may need to do a couple more days. Yes, image of betrayal. Yes, probably. You can get away with this if you put sealer in it, but the problem here is that it's so light, it's not going to darken your cracks very much. So you want to keep your wash a little thicker. So in the whole like hierarchy of thinned paints, you've got almost not thinned at all, which is a base coat, and then you've got moderately thinned, which is layering, and then you've got wash, which is really close to layering actually. Really, layering is just painting with washes, thicker washes. And then to there, you have glazing as the most transparent thing you're going to do with your paint, the most watery thing that you're going to do. And layering consistency is usually about 2 to 1 to 1 to 1 paint to water. So it is more paint than water. And glaze can go 1 to 1 or even 1 to 2 into the water territory. If I'm glazing with the most high coverage paints, I can almost go 3 to 1. So that gives you an idea. Thank you guys. I'm glad that this is helping you all. Working with thin paints can be hard. Like, this is pure paint chemistry. What you're doing here is if you're thinning it this much, where it's this watery, you're breaking down the bonds between the resins. So essentially, that's why it's falling out of solution a little bit. Only the fact that I had flow improver added to the paint, because all Master Series paint has flow improver added, helps keep it in solution. But what you're doing is you've broken all the bonds, and that means that the resins and the pigments are all separating, so that's why you get those rings. Everything is drying weirdly because it's no longer in solution. Whereas here, we don't see rings because I added extra medium to keep it all together. It's also a bit thicker. So you haven't thinned it enough to break it yet. So that's what happens when you put a bunch of water in a wash, is you break the paint. So don't do it. Make your washes thicker. You really want your wash to be thick enough to go into the cracks and outline the details that you want, and you don't need to make it any thinner than that. And using mediums, using like brush on sealer or a matte medium can let you thin it more. But then remember, the more you thin it, the more subtle your effect is going to be. Alrighty. I think we're about where... okay, so these days, that's a loaded question, 20-sided. In the old days, inks were lacquers and dyes. And some inks still are. Some artist inks still are lacquers and dyes. And a dye essentially is fully soluble, and a pigment is particulate. So a pigment never goes fully in solution. It can settle out like you see. But a dye is fully soluble and will not do that. These days, though, thanks to textile companies, which showed us the way, things like the Daler Rowney inks, quote unquote, when they say it's an acrylic ink, it's really just a wash in a slightly different base. So really, these days, a wash and an ink are pretty similar. Although the Daler Rowneys are too thick out of the bottle, usually to be used as wash, because they're actually targeting people doing 2D art with those. So you may want to thin those a little bit more if you're doing washes or glazes with them. But essentially, it's the same beast at this point. Yeah, if your base coat separates, then add more paint, Stephen Mack. There's no reason to get real thin on your base coat. Like, probably, I like to do about a 5 to 1 or 4 to 1 paint to water. So I'll do like 4 or 5 drops of paint, and then I'll put a drop of water in it, and that'll be my base coat. And it'll be nice and thin, and I usually put 2 coats on. So that would be what I do. Yeah, well, the inks... yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for, Miss Stimp, right? The downside to the old artist inks, which were dyes, guys, just so you know, is that dyes bleed. So the problem you'd run into is that inks were great and vibrant, and you could use them to get really vibrant shading on something. But then if you tried to paint over the top, the ink color would inevitably bleed through a little. And that was the most frustrating thing. So the best way to get mileage with real inks when you're miniature painting is to use them over metallics. Like a guy named Jakob Brun Nielsen from the UK, multiple Golden Demon winner, like international award winner painter. He was known for a long time for doing different ink glazes, different colors over his metallics, and they really were beautiful. But that's metallic flake being solid, the ink really can't bleed through it, so that's why that works. Otherwise, your mileage may vary very much. The De La Rowney inks, yeah, you can thin them with water. I mean, they're just acrylic paint with a slightly different base composition. And thinner. Much thinner, obviously. Yeah, exactly, Miss Tim. Yep, that's what the De La Rowneys are. Yep. Watered down acrylic paint with they're probably using super fine pigments. So to make them more translucent and to keep them in solution better. But yeah, so I think, Miss Dimp, if you're trying to find the old school stuff, you want to go for the fancy imported Japanese calligraphy inks, or I think that Winsor & Newton artist inks in the little glass pyramidical bottles, I think those are still straight up dyes. But don't quote me on that because I haven't bought them in a while. Hey, Max Styles, welcome back. I'm about to wrap it because it is 10:50 where I am, noon 50 where y'all are. Well, where some of y'all are. Some of you are in the evening hours already. I have too much to do to be in the evening hours yet. So yes, so at least we got a little work on our antlers and we got them blocked in. Hey, Balrog. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what it's a Japanese name. Pilot imports the inks, but there's a set of Japanese colored inks that Pilot imports now. You can get them in tiny little bottles in sets. But yeah. But do be aware of the bleed quality. I mean, the bleed quality is a thing. And if you're trying to especially put lighter colors over the top of your inks, beware. I had a competition model ruined once because of that. Wasn't ready for it. But when I thinned down my paint, the bleed became more, even worse. So I don't miss old inks. These days I use our clears. I find I get just as much mileage. And that keeps the finish the same too, because the other thing that inks used to be, everybody, is shiny, which is another reason they look good over metallics. Alrighty. Any questions, peeps? Any questions? We're going to wrap it for today. I've got to scamper and get some work done, and then I've got some coaching and tutoring and stuff. Foo dog! Yay! Gray marble. Look up pictures of gray marble and try to match it. But if you're going for gray stone at all, I usually use stone gray and weathered stone. That'd be 9086 and 9087 mixed with white for the marbling. We have an Asian dragon coming out with Bones 5, I think. And do we used to have a small Asian dragon? I don't remember. We've done Tengu. I know, and Kitsune, Duboya J. So I know we've got Kitsune and Tengu, but I'm not certain about the bigger. I don't think we do a Kirin or Kirin. Oh no! What's the problem, Kariniko? I'm looking down. OBS says it's okay. Justin says Twitch is having problems lately.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, we're good on this end.
Oh yeah, the Mystic Portal. Good call, M. Gronig. Sure, no problem. Do we have a raid, Justin?
Yes, we do.
No problem, Francis. Oh, Xandercles is getting staticky. I sound like a Dalek. Oh no! Ah! My intro shut up. I'm sorry that I sound like a Dalek. Justin sometimes gets that from me also. My mic is apparently working. Not that you could tell from looking at it, right? Invisible Justin. Yes. The invisible voice, or a disembodied voice. That's what he is. That's the term that I really like to call Justin, is disembodied voice. Yay. Okay, well that's good. Well, at least it's that way we know it's like something not me. Because I was so nervous about starting streaming from out here because I knew my internet wasn't quite as fast as it was back in Denton, where I had 150 up, 150 down. That was probably exorbitant. Yes, you're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. We'll be more Spirit Beastie tomorrow. I'm debating. I may kind of sit on the horns and think about how I want to play with them, and we might do some tail. We might finish some of the fur, because I really blocked in the shading on the fur, but I didn't highlight it for you guys, so we haven't done that yet. And it'll let us work a little bit more on the face now that I've got the colors worked out a bit more.
All right, our raid's ready. We're going to be raiding just Dices.
Oh, it's just Dices. Well, she's more than just Dices. She's awesome. So,
Oh, she is. She's pretty cool.
yeah, so everybody, make sure to give Dices our love, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow for Thursday. It's almost Memorial Day weekend. It's almost a nice long weekend, everybody. Looking forward to it. Awesome. Have a fantastic day, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.